Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. We've got a great presentation lined up for you today, but before we get started, there are just a few general admin points to cover. First and foremost, please use the online question tool to post any questions that you have and we will share them with our speaker. Second, if you experience any technical difficulties today, please let us know using that same questions tool and a member of our admin team will be on hand to support you. And finally, just to note, this session is being recorded and we'll be sharing a copy of that recording with you via email in the coming days. So, without further ado, I would like to hand over to our speaker to get us started.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining. As was already mentioned, before we start, just want to encourage anyone with questions as we talk through the session to use the questions function to ask these. We'll make sure to take a look at these during the session, cover some at the end, and obviously we will reply offline to any that we don't have time to cover. My name is William Mansfield. I lead the consulting and customer success team for LexisNexis IP. I've been with LexisNexis for around 5 years now, and previous to this, I worked in the solar, the photovoltaics industry, for one of the major players supporting clients and R&D strategy. At LexisNexis, and specifically in the customer success team, we work very closely with our clients to understand their needs, challenges, goals, and actively suggest ways in which the solutions that they currently subscribe to can help to solve or to overcome these. Not only do we use this knowledge to support our client base, but also our product development. And the discussion we have today on sustainability and innovation is an excellent example of this. So we recently had a meeting with the head of IP for a large Japanese company, and he arrived 2 minutes late. In Japan, that is a major faux pas. There is no such thing as fashionably late. He explained that the reason he was late was that he was giving an update to the board of directors on IP strategy, which is fantastic. To have the attention of the board shows that they understand how strategic and valuable IP is. But he continued to explain that it is fantastic, but it's a lot of work. And he's not wrong. For many, IP has risen from its previous role, relegated to the dusty filing cabinets, or thought of merely as a cost center, to a place of tremendous strategic importance and innovation. In these traditional functions, the IP team is collectively reading thousands of patents, developing a keen awareness not only for the technology and development direction of their own company, but also others in their field, as they also actively review patents from these players for oppositions or prior art research. There is a huge wealth of knowledge in the IP teams. However, it can be difficult to convert this into insights structured in a way the business as a whole can leverage. In my work, I've seen over and over how IP departments have identified opportunities to change and to grow, and not just their own departments, but much beyond, even the entire company. We have been working with IP teams for over a decade to foster this development, helping to enable them to take on this more strategic function. As modern big data IP solutions are a key enabler of this change. This change to IP as a function has also come just in time, as the world is facing unprecedented challenges, the biggest of which is sustainability. In order to maintain a sustainable environment and a planet that's worth living on for many generations to come, it has been targeted to reduce emissions by 45% by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050. So 2030, that is not so far away now. And to put this into perspective further, during the first pandemic year, when traffic of cargo vessels, planes, and cars came to almost a complete halt, emissions only reduced by 6.4%. Whilst that is significant, it's a drop in the ocean compared to the challenge we face. Change in consumer behavior alone can clearly not be the only answer. A bold innovation agenda will be essential to achieving net zero. And it's not just us that realize this. Even the financial industry and private equity players are realizing this. Every government, company, and shareholder must confront climate change. That's a statement coming from no other than the CEO of BlackRock, a private equity player with $10 trillion under management. And, that's not the typical voice that we expect to hear speaking about climate change. But Larry Fink, the CEO in question here, he's not alone. I mean, our own original voyage into sustainability came at the request of our clients, those also in the financial industry. Working with them, we really quickly identified that using patents as a way to uncover what companies were working on and which fields they were active in would be key to them. Supporting them to develop groups of stocks covering specific industries or specific technologies, which they could package to investors. Diving further, we saw that sustainability was a huge topic for them. So we actively worked on how to use patents for this end, for them to be able to create groups of companies that are considered to be sustainable from an innovation standpoint. And our financial customers were so interested in sustainability, not from the goodness of their hearts, but driven from their clients, the investors that they support. Their investors know that where there are challenges, opportunities arise, opportunities to drive change through innovation. And the IP community plays a key role in this. At its core, innovation is based on change, and we are the agents of change. The IP community is a great facilitator and agent of change. We are at the forefront of innovation and technology. We actively pursue innovation, training our clients and our business partners to recognize and report new innovations. We actively read the new innovations in our field. We contribute and drive business strategy. Yet, there are still challenges we need to overcome. Coming back a little bit to the core of what patents are, they are really a contract with society. You tell us what you invented, and in turn, we provide you protection. You reveal your invention, and in return, you get exclusivity, at least for a time. I mean, this social contract is there to promote innovation. Not that I think that Big Pharma would not be actively trying to develop the next breakthrough drug without the existence of the patent system, but the development and resulting technology breakthroughs would be trade secrets, all hush-hush kept to the few who need to know, and all behind closed doors. Through this social contract, we get the opportunity to know what has been developed and how. Others not within that inner circle can get to know and work to further develop this technology, or even develop more effective alternatives. Yet, because of this, the language that we speak as IP professionals tends to be obtuse, by design. We are extremely precise, yet obscuring language. Let's take an example of that. So on the left here, this is how the rest of the world would think of a chair. We would use terms like chair or seat, terms aimed at effectively communicating the object in the simplest way to the widest group of people. On the right is how the IP community communicates and thinks. A chair might be some obtuse combination of a horizontal plane connected to a vertical plane at 90 degrees at the rear, and a shaft centered on the horizontal plane, both adjustable and height, and so on. And this language is designed to communicate the structure, the function, the use of the object without using common tongue. Clearly explain the object, but giving the casual observer no clue as to what we are describing. Yet, if we, as a community of IP professionals, hope to seize the opportunity that this moment offers us, we need to also evolve the way we communicate our value to the outside world. Thinking back to my Japanese colleague, as he prepared for the board meeting, he is asking himself, what do I communicate to my stakeholders about our IP strategy? Historically, that's been a very difficult question to answer. It was almost like communicating via tin cans. It was like speaking two different languages. But time is running out. We cannot afford to waste time with a tin can communication. We need to communicate effectively and efficiently our values and insights to the outside world. And if we want to understand sustainability and patents, we need more than a cord to connect the dots. We embarked on a journey and dove deep into the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals framework. Towards the end of the session today, I will go into some detail on the what and the how. But for now, I will just say that this framework was put in place in 2015 to lay out a path to sustainability. This framework is highly structured, being the result of over 50 years of negotiation facilitated by the United Nations between governments, NGOs, companies, and many other interested parties. Using this, we have developed a readily accessible mapping of all patents worldwide to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and their 200 or so targets. A framework that allows us to measure, track, and compare which companies and technologies are the biggest contributors to a sustainable future. So now that we have connected the dots between the changing world of patents and the biggest challenges of our time, let's look what good communication looks like. The German company Merck believes in science as a force for good. So to be able to accurately assess of its social and environmental impact is extremely important. Coming directly from their reports, they state, we deliver sustainable value, and we want to maintain an active and attractive financial profile whilst assessing and considering the ESG impact of our growth ambition. For reference, their ESG is environmental, social, and governance, a kind of catch-all term for sustainability and some other factors. I think this is a fantastic statement. It clearly expresses the challenge and different pressures companies face. Investors have to see growth in their assets, else they may move these to where they can achieve this growth. This can lead to companies to pursue growth blindly, ignoring the negative impacts this may have to their workers, the environment, or even to their own long-term business. To actively look to understand the challenges and choices and potential impacts allows companies like Merck to not only make decisions knowingly, weighing the pros, cons, and alternatives, practicing good decision making, but it also allows them to pursue new areas of development, potentially non-traditional methods, which can lead to new opportunities. Last year, Merck started to assess the sustainability impact of its intellectual property using patent analytics. The problem Merck faced, though, was A, they had no idea how IP was contributing to sustainability, and B, the definition of what is or is not sustainable is very often subjective, non-specific, and completely intransparent. So they set on a path defining their own criteria, but still at a cost of being potentially intransparent and inherently subjective as they were developing this themselves. But they found a solution that brings clarity to innovation, brings clarity to their boardroom. By partnering with us, they are able to use an objective measurement and communicate clearly, both internally and externally, how they are progressing from an innovation perspective against their ambitious goals. With the right technology partner, you can solve the tin can problem, and now their CEO and their shareholders are armed with the insights they need. What we saw here with Merck is an example of transparency, but there are others out there that are very vocal. I think we all know examples of companies that put a lot of energy into sharing how green, how sustainable they are. I guess everyone here can, think of one player in your industry that puts sustainability at the front of center of all of their marketing material. To a degree that it becomes annoying to your board and the company. And yet it's always very difficult to assess whether these players put their money where their mouth is. But you can't argue so much with patents. Patent information is publicly available, is global and transparent, and can thus be objectively measured. Munich-based Siemens was dealing with this exact problem. Our competitor was making a lot of OMG noise, but they had no way of knowing whether it was noise or it was truth. And they also had no way of knowing about how they stacked up from a sustainable innovation standpoint. Using LexisNexis patent site data, they were able to finally see not only does Siemens have a greater share of their patent portfolio in SDG relevant technologies, but they are also continuing to increase this year on year, whereas their OMG, we're so green competitor has a flat development for over a decade already. And it gets even better. Siemens' share in SDG related technologies in their portfolio is so high that it makes them one of the world's most important patent holders when it comes to these types of technologies. And this and similar insights will feature in a report we plan to publish in the new year. Without this data, they would have never been able to realize this, would have never been able to communicate it. But I am making this sound far easier than it actually is. Of course, there are challenges as patent data is complex and the language is obscure. If we want to talk about sustainability, for example, if I say renewable energy, that passes, right? We would all agree that, renewable energy is sustainable. Okay, we can check that. What about solar? Yeah, check. PV, maybe? Yeah, check. But what about all of the upstream technologies which enable this? What about the metal paste, for example? I mean, the metal paste goes on the semiconductive material. It forms the circuit between the semiconductive material and the wider circuit. I mean, it's not doing the heavy lifting of converting the light into electricity, but it is an integral part of the system, without which the whole would not work. So efficiencies here can directly lead to greater power output and lower costs. Not only this, but developments in the material used can reduce consumption of rare or costly elements, which also have the potential negative environmental impacts resulting from their mining, from their extraction. There are so many unsung heroes, like our metal paste in this case. This shows us that we need to change not only how we communicate to the board and to the outside world, but even how we communicate within the patent to recognize the full impact. Historically, the tendency has been to hide behind obscure language. Those days are over. We must be more clear, crystal clear about the importance and the impact of the unsung heroes. This is how you create visibility for yourself, but also credibility and the value for your company. This level of visibility matters. And it's interesting. I mean, this as a topic is something which has developed organically when speaking with a number of our clients. The cost benefit analysis of obtuse versus clear language in patent drafting, I would say, appears to be shifting as companies want to demonstrate their positive impact through their innovation, being clearer in their patents, not only about the core innovation, but the downstream benefits of this. This is the overall insights and background and what we have seen working with our customers. But I also want to give you guys a bit more detail into exactly what we do and how we work with the SDGs and turn this into the insights that we can generate. So to take a step back, the UN SDGs, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, this is 17 very high-level items. These are honestly, I think, more of a structural component to be able to grasp the scope of these. And you'll see as we go into the depths of this that there is a lot more detail underneath them. A lot of these are technologically based, affordable and clean energy, for example, or clean water and sanitation. There are clear and obvious technology developments in these areas that contribute to these. Others, less so, no poverty, for example. Some are not technologically based at all. 16 and 17, for example, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and partnership for the goals, respectively. As these have no technological base, there are some elements of the SDGs we cannot cover with patents, namely 8, 10, 16, and 17. When we go a level deeper, there are the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals targets. These are specific things that the UN would like to achieve in order to reach sustainability. These are specific targets, fairly heavily detailed in order to reach this overall goal of sustainability. Each one of these mapping up to one of the 17 goals. But it's no good just to have a target. We need to have some way of determining if we reached this target or not. So beneath the targets, there is a huge amount of detail. There are indicators, so what we need to measure and what the threshold is for having achieved that target. So we have a specific measurement to determine if we achieve that target or not. And within there, within the indicators, within the metadata that describes these, the UN explicitly describes who is responsible for this measurement, who is responsible for calculating it, and what exactly should be included and excluded from the measurement. So this information we have from the UN, the goals, the targets, the indicators, and the metadata, and the further definitions, concepts, policy documents that they create, is a huge wealth of detail and information to understand high level what the UN thinks we need to achieve, but also the detail and the spirit of those targets and goals. This is all the information from the UN. But we can take this and then convert it into technology fields, searches that we can do on patent data. And so we use this very structured, highly detailed outline from the UN of the high-level topics and the detail underneath to decide which topics need to be searched for, so which technology fields we need to include within our system, and how we should define those searches as well. So not just what search, but what should be included as well to some degree. And there, this part is, where we start to add our own insights here. We fully map everything to the UN SDGs. We follow every bit of detail that they have, but we have to define the details of the search. And it does our target to align with the SDGs in every way we can as we're going through that process. We'll look at that in a tiny bit more detail as well. And then once we have this, once we have these searches defined, we can then start to add typical patent site elements to this. Our value indicators, who the owners are, the strength of these portfolios, the share that is within these, as we saw with the earlier graphic with Siemens, how much they versus their competitor is focused on sustainability. And we can leverage this all in the tool, pulling in these definitions and drilling into each part of it in any amount of detail that we would like to. So maybe just to dive a little bit deeper on the explanation here. What we have on the screen is some of the detail from the United Nations definitions. So on the left-hand side, this is for SDG 3, good health and well-being. This is the outline of the targets associated with SDG 3 from the United Nations site. So there is the first one, to reduce maternal mortality rate. I think we can already start to see, there's obvious technology searches that could go into this, but maybe we focus on the target 3.3. By 2030, end the epidemic of AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, and neglected tropical diseases, and combat hepatitis, waterborne diseases, and other communicable disease. So there's quite a bit in there, right? There are things that are very, very clear. The first one, end the epidemic of AIDS. Any technology that is contributing to solving that problem is included within a search for AIDS within our SDG definition. That is fairly straightforward. If we take waterborne diseases, for an example, it's still fairly apparent what the UN means, but we need to go into a bit more detail than this. So yeah, on the right-hand side, there is an example of some of the metadata detailing the goals, the targets, the indicators, for example, in this one talking about malaria, for example, and who is responsible for producing this information. In this case, the Global Malaria Program at the WHO. So the WHO is responsible for this. So we take this information, all of the background information as well, and turn this into our search. And to then explain the details of this to anyone who is interested, we create a documentation to go with each and every search, of which there are about 100. This details the topic, in this case, waterborne diseases, the general scope, what it covers, some references. So this is, where are we sourcing our information from? Who are the authorities that we have relied on in order to define this? The SDG it's related to, and then the actual, some details on the specifics of the search that we have used here. In this particular case, waterborne disease has two obvious components to this. There is a list of known waterborne diseases. The WHO, that party that is responsible for reporting on this, provides a list of this, which is listed in the references there, which includes things like cholera and typhoid. But also any disease which could be received through water and be waterborne needs to also be included, and any technology which is then addressing that issue needs to also be included. So whilst we can take an exclusive list of known diseases that need to be included, we also need to broaden our scope to include waterborne and water contamination and such as broader terms, along with elements like bacteria or virus or disease. And this you can see here in the documentation. And of course, it needs to include not just searches for the disease themselves, but things like solutions to this, vaccines, immunization, maybe post-care, rehydration, for example. So the searches that we develop are fairly extensive and as well documented as we can here in a way that communicates, again, what they are trying to show. So that's a lot of the detail, and this then aggregates up. So we can then see this in PatentSite as a number of different charts and elements, as people who use the software know and are aware of. But here, for example, we take RELX, which is LexisNexis's ultimate parent, and we can see the areas where RELX is actively contributing to sustainability. This is primarily in SDG 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. We are primarily a technology company, so this aligns with this. We can also see some elements in quality education. There is an element of quality education which talks about natural language processing and translation to make education documentation and resources available to the widest group possible. That is a challenge that we also face within our industry. We have some technology around this, and so it's also captured here as well. And so here we can boil up the analysis, this detailed underlying output that we've created, and boil it up to owners, specific SDGs, technologies, who is working, how much, in which areas, how much they are focused on this, a wealth of insights available at the fingertips. And all of this can be drilled into in any amount of detail, which individual patents, which individual technologies, and why are they included. So maybe to summarize a little bit. In order to be able to say what is sustainable innovation, we need a strong platform to stand on. We need strong measurability. Patent data is a unique source of that insight. Patent data isn't manipulated the same way that, say, marketing material or innovation, investor communication or products or public-facing material is typically. Patent data needs to reflect the innovation that it has. So this gives us a really strong way of objectively assessing the strength of a company's portfolio and how active their innovation is, particularly in regard to sustainability. It needs to be highly transparent. There are a lot of sustainability or ESG or other assessments that are very frequently done by experts to some degree. Experts that disagree, that have differing opinions, that can vary wildly depending on what they focus on or how much they look at. Here we have something very systematic that we have developed. We don't decide anything about sustainability. We map everything to the way that the UN has defined it. We only create search topics for those areas. And so, and this is highly documented, as we've seen as well. So we can look at what is included, why it is included, which patents they are, who owns them, what space they're in, all of the detail we can dive into this. And transparency is key to developing trust, to actually believing in and relying on the data. We need to be able to value this, right? I think everyone knows that the number of patents that someone has is no great measure for how strong their portfolio is, but using some quality indicator is critical to be able to assess the real strength of contribution. And so building on this base of measurability and transparency, we can use metrics like the Patent Asset Index in order to reveal who are the real champions and allow stakeholders and shareholders to make much better decisions. And finally, accessibility. There is a lot of work that goes into this, not just from us, but if we look at the detail and the expertise that the UN has put into this over really like half a century, the original meetings and versions of some kind of improving the environment discussions at the UN go back to the early 70s. And everything that's come since then has built upon that. So whilst the SDGs maybe are only since 2015, they are standing on the shoulders of all that came before. Half a century of discussion and alignment to be able to say, what is sustainability? What is it that we as a world need to achieve to be sustainable? There is a huge amount of detail there that we've had to look into in order to develop the searches that we have today. The expertise that have gone into the searches, not just ourselves, but working with others in order to develop and refine these to make sure that they are as good as possible. And all of the patent data that sits within PatentSite, like all of this comes together into this simple interface of being able to put in your company and see, say, the share of sustainable innovation that is held within the portfolio instantly. This is the result of a huge amount of work that puts this information at the fingertips of even non-patent experts. And because of the background and the detailed documentation that sits behind this, they or anyone else or any expert can look into the details and see why something is there and what the logic is to be able to come back to this point of trusting the data. We need that transparency as well. We are extremely keen to collaborate with anyone who is interested. We have worked with a lot of our stakeholders and partners in order to bring this to where it is today. Thank you very much, Lucy. Maybe you can just go on to the final slide as well. If anyone would be interested in discussing further, then please do let us know. I think here, the UN clearly saw that this is not achievable on your own, right? It is only achievable through working together. And I think, that's why they made the 17th goal, this partnership for the goals. So I think that is a good place to end, particularly as computer issues, but we can also field any questions as long as my audio holds out.
Yes, Will. So I've been keeping a track on the incoming questions. And let me start with, if companies start to talk more about sustainable technologies in their patents, is that not simply greenwashing?
Yeah, I mean, this is a super question, right? I mean, companies very frequently use the sources of publicizing their information as a way of pushing out the odd examples, specific examples, in order to basically do this greenwashing. And it's kind of what we saw with the example that we talk about with Siemens, right? Competitors, individuals in the market can be extremely active in their marketing, say, they have full control over this, so they can just use very cherry-picked examples in order to look as like they are working very actively towards innovation and sustainability, but are maybe just here and there doing this. When we look at patents, what goes in there, it needs to be what is covered by the technology, the innovation that is being submitted. If people just started to throw green words in the description at some point, this will not be picked up, right? People will tell the difference. We, in our process, will tell the difference between that and something actually covering the specific technology. But if we have technologies which are clearly contributing or potentially contributing to something that is sustainable, and then it further mentions sustainability and going towards some particular aspect, like the metal paste example that we had, if there's something in there that says, you know, this reduces resistance, this can then potentially improve the efficiency of the solar cell and produce greater energy at the end, this is very evident, right? And you know, the examiners, they will need to see that this is part of the technology that is being covered. So whilst sure, communicating about this is important, and adding this detail will add to this, there is a hard limit about how much can be added, or how, yeah, you can actually manipulate this. So it is a very much more controlled outlet than, say, typical like marketing material or investor communication is, which the company has full control over.
Yeah. Okay. I guess that also answers the following question: is there a risk that people will try and game the system by inserting stock phrases into the description to try and get their patents to be classified into the UN SDGs?
Exactly, right? I mean, if you have something that is obviously nothing to do with the topics, and then just throw additional terms in, this is going to be fairly evident what is going on, right? And like I say, there is a limit to what you can do here, right? If you can't insert claims to the patent that are completely fictional and unrelated to the technology, right? This won't get through. You might be able to do that somewhere in the description in some jurisdictions, right? That might get passed, but as I'm sure everyone knows, the description is fairly problematic to use as a source, and needs to be very, very carefully used when it is. We do in some cases within our process, but where we do, we are extremely careful about what we do to avoid noise, but to avoid false positives or false negatives.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Then the next question: which metrics do people use to measure the SDGs?
Sure. I mean, we very frequently ourselves look at what is the active patent portfolio of a company. More specifically, we look at what is the patent asset index of that active portfolio, to include not just a quantity metric, but a quality metric. So we talk about the strength of the portfolio. This is a good starting point when we want to just compare one portfolio to another, or maybe to some degree the development of that portfolio to another. I think this is a very fair comparison. But the potential rate of change of this is maybe not too high, and it doesn't necessarily focus on new innovation. It includes new innovation, but it also includes the entire back catalogue of active patents. So what some have chosen to do is then look at patents that are maybe recently published, for example, so that they can say, okay, these are the new innovations that we are working on. How are we adding to our portfolio, and how sustainable is what we are currently adding to our portfolio, our new publications. And again, you could measure that in number of patents, but you could achieve that goal just by filing more. And so what a lot of companies are looking to do is look at the share of newly published patents that are in line with the SDGs. So in that way, we can see what proportion, what amount of effort, of invest is going towards sustainable technology, and how much is not, and what is the current active innovation that is ongoing as well. And obviously over time, that will change the overall portfolio, but it's like an initial signal to this.
Yeah, okay. Then can you talk about who else is using the patent side SDGs and for what?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously within the slides, I mentioned a couple of companies. These are, examples of those that are using this. I would say about half of our customer base is actively working with this in some way. Of course, to get to the stage, say that Merck that we looked at as an example, to get this to their investor communication already, I mean, their thinking was already highly developed when we came around to them with this new idea from us. And actually their thinking, without having previously talked together, was extremely similar to what we were thinking. And so in their case, there was value in slightly more objective versions of what they would have probably done anyway. And so there was a very quick route to using this. But there are a lot of other companies that start to talk about this. I know our Japanese team, there are a number of our clients in Japan who have actively been presenting about this. When I think of some recent presentations from say Showa Denko, for example, they are actively showing this internally, and even to the point where they are comfortable to present this to others externally, not just other patent site users, but other people within the IP community as well. So it is early-ish days on the road. A lot of people are actively working with it, and we start to see the fruits of that, the outcomes in some places of working with it. And I think over the next year, we will see a lot more of that as people have more time to digest, produce the insights, become comfortable, and like I mentioned, look through the details, understand the transparency, look into what is there, and then feel comfortable and trust it and be able to use it for their business.
Okay, thank you. And then one more question: how do you update the SDGs to reflect changes in technologies?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? These are searches, right? They are not some dynamic machine learning algorithm. They are specific things that we have searched for and documented. So we started this slightly more than a year ago, or nearly 2 years ago, I guess, is when we started internally. And over that time, even the UN has refined their guidance. They have tweaked some of the targets. They've tweaked some of the metadata, and so even if technology doesn't march forward, which it does, the UN does change from time to time. So we need to reflect this. So we currently have the first version of the SDG searches in PatentSite, and shortly we will update this slightly to a newer version, which takes into account those changes that the UN has made, those refinements that they made to their definitions, which we need to reflect. And our plan is to do that on an annual basis, to make these not large changes, but refinements. And at that point in time, we can also consider, do our searches capture all of the known technologies, right? When we talked about waterborne disease as the known list of diseases, plus trying to capture the unknown. So we can think, are there new technologies? If someone, totally solves the fusion energy or the fission energy problem, right? Then we might have to add some more detail to this. That's captured in nuclear energy today, but maybe we would have to split it out into a new search. Could be. And we would have to add that. But like that example as well, it's already captured in a broad sense by our searches, specifically searching for the known, and then also broader elements that search for the lesser known items. I guess it's on the hour again now. So yeah, I appreciate everyone joining. Apologies for the technology problems on my side at the end, and thank you to our host for stepping in and showing the last couple of remaining slides. If there are any other questions, of course, we will follow up on these offline. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, if you want to know more about what is included in there, then, or if you have ideas, then we are very, very open to discussions. So thank everyone for joining, and thank you to Irina and our host as well.
Thank you, Will.